September 2019, Boston, Massachusetts. Rachel Morrison was 23 years old when she enrolled in the graduate program at Brookfield University. She had spent 2 years working in marketing after college, saving money and building her resume. Graduate school was her next step, a path toward the career she'd always wanted. She never imagined that within 6 months, she would be sitting across from FBI agents, describing a man she thought she knew. The fall semester started with promise. Rachel moved into a small apartment in Cambridge, excited about her courses and the opportunities ahead. Her program was competitive, filled with driven students who wanted to make their mark. She was ready to work hard and prove herself. On the first day of her strategic communications seminar, she met Professor Marcus Ashford. He walked into the classroom with the kind of confidence that commanded attention. 53 years old, silver-haired, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to assess everyone in the room. He wore an expensive suit that fit perfectly. His British accent added to his charm. "Communication is power," he said, setting down his leather briefcase. "By the end of this course, you'll understand how to wield that power ethically and effectively." Rachel was immediately impressed. His credentials were impeccable. Oxford educated, 20 years of consulting experience with Fortune 500 companies, published author of 2 books on crisis management. Several students had told her that getting into his seminar was a coup. The class was small, only 12 students. Ashford's teaching style was engaging and dynamic. He told stories from his consulting work, analyzed real-world case studies, and challenged students to think critically. Rachel found herself looking forward to his class more than any other. "He was brilliant," recalled Jennifer Chen, who sat next to Rachel in the seminar. "Everyone wanted to impress him. He had this way of making you feel special when he paid attention to your work." Rachel worked hard on her assignments. She stayed after class occasionally to ask questions. Ashford was always generous with his time, offering feedback and encouragement. He seemed genuinely interested in helping his students succeed. By October, Rachel had become one of his most engaged students. Her papers earned consistent praise. During one office hours appointment, Ashford suggested she consider applying for a research assistant position he was creating for the spring semester. "You have real talent," he told her, leaning back in his leather desk chair. "I think you could go far in this field." Rachel was thrilled. A research position with Professor Ashford would look incredible on her resume. She thanked him and promised to submit her application. What she didn't know was that Marcus Ashford wasn't who he claimed to be. His real name was Michael Brennan. He was wanted in 3 states for financial fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The FBI had been searching for him for 2 years. The warning signs started small. Rachel's roommate Sarah noticed them first. "Something about him doesn't add up," Sarah said one evening in November. They were sitting in their small living room, and Rachel had been talking enthusiastically about her research assistant application. "What do you mean?" Rachel asked. "I looked him up online. His background seems thin, like there are articles he's written and his university bio, but not much else. No social media, no photos from conferences. For someone supposedly so prominent, he has a weirdly small digital footprint." Rachel dismissed the concern. "He's probably just private. Not everyone broadcasts their life online." Sarah nodded but looked unconvinced. "Maybe. Just be careful." Rachel got the research assistant position in December. She would start in January, working closely with Ashford on a book he was writing about corporate communication ethics. The pay was modest, but helpful. More importantly, it was a prestigious opportunity. During their first planning meeting in early January 2020, Ashford suggested they occasionally meet at a coffee shop near campus rather than his office. "I think better outside the university environment," he explained. "Less formal, more creative thinking." Rachel agreed. It seemed reasonable enough. The coffee shop meetings became regular. Every Tuesday afternoon, they would discuss research, review drafts, and plan next steps. Ashford was always punctual and professional. He bought her coffee and treated these sessions like collaborative work between colleagues, not professor and student. He made her feel important, recalled Dr. Linda Martinez, a psychology professor at Brookfield who later reviewed the case. That's a classic pattern with manipulative individuals. They identify someone's vulnerabilities and desires, then position themselves as the person who can fulfill those needs. By February, the nature of their interactions had subtly shifted. Ashford started sharing more personal information. He mentioned his divorce 10 years earlier. He talked about feeling isolated in Boston, missing the intellectual companionship of like-minded people. He never said anything inappropriate, but the conversations became more intimate. Rachel found herself developing feelings she knew she shouldn't have. He was her professor. It was unethical and potentially problematic. But he was brilliant, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in her ideas and aspirations. One Tuesday in late February, after their coffee shop meeting, Ashford walked her back toward campus. It was cold, the February wind cutting through her coat. As they approached the university gates, he stopped. "I have to be honest with you," he said, his voice serious. "I value our working relationship tremendously, but I find myself looking forward to these meetings for reasons beyond the research." Rachel's heart pounded. She knew where this was going. "I'm very attracted to you," he continued. "Not just intellectually, though certainly that. But I want to be transparent. I would never want to put you in an uncomfortable position, and I know the power dynamics here are complicated." She should have said no. She should have ended it right there. Later, she would replay this moment 1,000 times, wondering why she didn't walk away. Instead, she said, "I feel the same way." They agreed to keep things quiet until the semester ended. It felt thrilling and forbidden. Rachel told herself it wasn't really wrong since they were both adults and the semester would be over soon. She didn't tell Sarah or her family. Some part of her knew they would object. "That's what these predators count on," explained Detective Sarah Walsh of the Boston Police Department, who eventually worked on the case. "They create a secret. They make the victim complicit in hiding the relationship. That isolation is crucial to maintaining control." March arrived, and COVID-19 began disrupting everything. The university moved classes online. Campus closed. Rachel went home to her parents' house in Connecticut for what was supposed to be 2 weeks. Ashford called her frequently. Video chats, text messages, long phone conversations. He seemed lonely and stressed about the pandemic. Rachel found herself becoming his emotional support. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he told her during one call. "You're the bright spot in all this chaos." By April, they were talking every day. He sent her gifts, books, flowers, expensive chocolates delivered to her parents' house. Her mother noticed but didn't press when Rachel said they were from a professor who appreciated her work. "Looking back, that was when I should have seen it," Rachel's mother, Patricia Morrison, later said. "The gifts were too personal, too expensive. But I trusted Rachel's judgment." In May, as pandemic restrictions began to ease, Ashford suggested they meet in person. He had rented a house in Newport, Rhode Island for the summer. Just for a weekend, he said. They could finally spend real time together. Rachel hesitated. Her parents thought she was still just his research assistant. Her friends didn't know about the relationship. Going away with him for a weekend felt like a major step. But she missed him. The months of phone calls had deepened her feelings. She agreed. The weekend in Newport started perfectly. The house was beautiful, overlooking the water. Ashford cooked dinner, and they talked for hours about everything except work. It felt natural and right. On Saturday evening, they went for a walk along the cliffs. The sunset painted the ocean orange and gold. Ashford took her hand. "I'm falling in love with you," he said. Rachel felt her chest tighten with emotion. "I love you too." What she didn't know was that 300 miles away in New York, a financial analyst named Robert Chen had just filed a report with the FBI. He had noticed something strange about a university professor's background while doing routine research for a documentary project. The name Marcus Ashford appeared in university records, but there were inconsistencies. Chen dug deeper. By Monday, the FBI had opened a preliminary investigation. That same Monday, Rachel returned home from Newport. She felt confused and exhilarated. The relationship felt real, but she knew the ethical complications were significant. She decided to confide in Sarah. "You what?" Sarah's voice was sharp with concern when Rachel told her about the weekend. "I know it sounds bad, but it's not like that. We're both adults. The semester is over. I'm not even his student anymore." "Rachel, he's your professor. He's 30 years older than you. This is exactly the kind of relationship that ruins careers." "It won't," Rachel insisted. "We're being careful." Sarah looked worried but dropped the subject. She could tell Rachel wasn't ready to hear the truth. June brought more complications. Ashford asked Rachel to help him with a sensitive project. He needed to move some money between accounts for his book advance and consulting fees. It was complicated, he explained, because of international banking regulations. Could she set up an account to receive a transfer and then forward it to another account he'd specify? Rachel felt uneasy. "Why can't you do it yourself?" "Tax reasons," he said smoothly. "It's all completely legal. But my accountant recommended routing it this way. You'd just be helping me avoid some unnecessary paperwork." She agreed, though something felt wrong. She opened the account and received the transfer, $47,000. Following his instructions, she immediately transferred it to an account in the Cayman Islands. "That's textbook money laundering," Detective Walsh later explained. He was using her to move stolen funds. She had no idea, but legally, she was now implicated in his criminal activity. In July, Rachel moved back to Boston for the summer. The university was still operating remotely, but she wanted to be closer to Ashford. She got a sublease in Cambridge. They saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, always at his place or restaurants in neighboring towns, never on campus, never anywhere they might see someone from the university. Ashford explained it was just to avoid gossip until the fall semester, when she would no longer be in his department. Rachel's friends noticed she was distant. Her family called less frequently. She was spending all her time either working on research or with Ashford. "Classic isolation pattern," noted Dr. Martinez. He systematically separated her from her support network. Every predator does this. It makes the victim dependent and less likely to question what's happening. In early August, Sarah called Rachel with disturbing news. "I need you to listen to me without getting defensive," Sarah said. "I hired someone to do a background check on your professor." "You what?" "Rachel, something wasn't right. I needed to know. And what I found..." Sarah paused. There's almost nothing about him before he showed up at Brookfield 3 years ago. His Oxford credentials, I can't verify them. His published books exist, but there's weirdness around the publishing history. And his consulting clients, I contacted 2 of them. They've never heard of Marcus Ashford. Rachel felt cold. That's impossible. He's a professor at a major university. They would have checked his background. Would they? How thorough are those checks? I think you need to confront him about this. Rachel promised she would, but she didn't. She was scared of what she might learn. Part of her didn't want to know. 3 days later, on August 10th, 2020, everything exploded. Rachel was at Ashford's apartment. They were making dinner together, discussing plans for the fall semester. She had finally decided she needed to ask him about Sarah's concerns. She was searching for the right way to bring it up when someone knocked on the door. Ashford froze. "Don't answer it." "What?" "Rachel, please, don't answer the door." The knocking became louder, more insistent. A voice called out, "FBI, open the door." Rachel stared at Ashford. His face had gone white. In that moment, she knew. Everything Sarah had said was true. "Marcus, what's happening?" "My name isn't Marcus," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The FBI broke down the door 30 seconds later. 4 agents rushed in, guns drawn. They pushed Rachel aside and forced Ashford, or whoever he really was, to the ground. Someone was shouting Miranda rights. Rachel stood against the wall, shaking. One agent, a woman in her 40s, approached Rachel. "Are you Rachel Morrison?" Rachel nodded. "I'm Special Agent Jennifer Park. We need to talk." The next 4 hours were a blur. Rachel was taken to the FBI field office. She wasn't under arrest, Agent Park explained, but she was a material witness. They needed her cooperation. In an interrogation room, Agent Park laid out the truth. The man Rachel knew as Marcus Ashford was actually Michael Brennan, age 53, wanted for financial crimes across multiple states. He had embezzled over $3 million from clients through his fraudulent consulting business. When authorities got close, he disappeared. He had created the Marcus Ashford identity using stolen credentials and forged documents. Brookfield University had been fooled by his elaborate background. "How long have you known him?" Agent Park asked. "Almost a year. He's my professor." "He's not really a professor. He has no PhD. His credentials are fake. Everything about Marcus Ashford is a fabrication." Rachel felt sick. "But his class, he taught us. He knew so much." "He's intelligent and well-read," Park acknowledged. "That's what makes him dangerous. He's been running cons for 20 years. You're not the first young woman he's targeted." That's when Rachel learned the worst part. There had been others. In Seattle, before he was Marcus Ashford, he had been David Chen, a financial advisor who seduced a client's daughter. In Phoenix before that, he had been Thomas Wright, a businessman who manipulated a graduate student into helping him launder money. The pattern was always the same. Create a credible identity. Get a legitimate position that offered access to vulnerable young women. Establish trust. Develop a romantic relationship. Use them for money laundering or other criminal purposes. Disappear before anyone discovered the truth. "You're lucky," Agent Park said. The other women, he left them facing criminal charges. One went to prison for 18 months as an accessory to his crimes. Rachel started crying. She had helped him move money. She could go to prison. "We're going to need your full cooperation," Park said, not unkindly. "Tell us everything, every conversation, every transaction, every detail you can remember. If you help us build the case against him, We'll make sure the prosecutor knows you were a victim, not a willing participant." Rachel told them everything. Over the following weeks, the full scope of Brennan's operation became clear. He had been planning to disappear again. The money Rachel had helped transfer was part of a larger scheme. He had embezzled funds from several wealthy clients he'd been cultivating through his university connections. He had planned to vanish in September, leaving Boston with a new identity already prepared. "He never loved you," Agent Park told Rachel during one interview. "I'm sorry to be blunt, but you need to understand this. You were useful to him. Young, trusting, isolated from your support system. You fit his victim profile perfectly." Rachel's family hired a lawyer. Her mother drove up from Connecticut and stayed with her for 2 weeks. Sarah helped her move out of her apartment, away from the memories. The university launched an investigation into how Brennan had gotten hired. It turned out he had exploited a gap in their background check procedures. His forged credentials had been convincing enough to pass initial screening. The hiring committee had been impressed by his interview and apparent expertise. They had failed to dig deep enough. Brookfield's president issued a public apology. The director of human resources resigned. New background check procedures were implemented. Michael Brennan was charged with identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. The evidence was overwhelming. In November 2020, he pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Rachel was not charged with any crime. The prosecutor accepted that she had been manipulated and had no knowledge of Brennan's criminal activities. Still, the experience left scars. She withdrew from graduate school. She couldn't imagine returning to campus, sitting in classrooms, trusting professors. She moved back to Connecticut and started therapy. "I felt so stupid," Rachel said in a victim impact statement read at Brennan's sentencing. "I kept asking myself how I didn't see it. How could I have been so blind? But I've learned that's what predators do. They're professionals at manipulation. They study people and find their weaknesses. My weakness was wanting to be special, wanting someone successful to see my potential. He identified that and exploited it perfectly." Jennifer Chen, Rachel's former classmate, visited her twice during her recovery. "She was a different person," Chen recalled. "All that light and enthusiasm was gone. He didn't just steal her money or her trust. He stole her sense of herself." But Rachel was stronger than she knew. By spring 2021, she had started working again, taking a position with a marketing firm in Hartford. She still saw her therapist weekly. She had reconnected with old friends and was slowly rebuilding her confidence. "I'll never be the same person I was before," Rachel said in an interview for this story. But maybe that's okay. That person was naive in ways that made her vulnerable. "I'm more careful now. I trust my instincts when something feels wrong. I don't ignore red flags to avoid conflict or to preserve something I want to believe in." Sarah stayed in close contact. "I wish I had pushed harder when I first had concerns," she said. "But I'm proud of how Rachel has recovered. She's tougher than she thinks." The FBI estimates that Michael Brennan stole over $4 million during his various identities. Most of it was never recovered. His victims included dozens of clients, 3 universities, and at least 5 young women like Rachel. In prison, Brennan has given interviews claiming he feels remorse. He's writing a book about his crimes. Some victims find this edition insulting. Rachel has chosen not to read anything he's published. "He doesn't get any more of my time or energy," she said. "I gave him enough of both." Today, Rachel is 27. She's working in corporate communications. She's dating someone new, a relationship built on honesty and transparency. She speaks occasionally to victim advocacy groups about romance fraud and manipulation tactics. I share my story because I want other women to know they're not alone and they're not stupid, she explained. These criminals are sophisticated. They're practiced. Falling for their lies doesn't mean you're weak or naive. It means you encountered someone who made deception their life's work. Dr. Martinez uses Rachel's case when teaching about psychological manipulation. What makes her story remarkable isn't that she was fooled, Martinez said. It's that she had the courage to come forward, cooperate with authorities, and rebuild her life. Many victims never recover. Rachel did. The university created a scholarship in honor of victims of educational fraud. They established stricter policies about professor-student relationships. They improved their background verification systems. None of it can undo what happened. But Rachel takes comfort in knowing her experience led to changes that might protect others. I'll always have some anger, she admitted. Anger at him, obviously, but also at myself for ignoring the warning signs. Sarah tried to tell me. My instincts tried to tell me. But I wanted so badly to believe in this brilliant person who saw something special in me. She paused, looking out the window of the coffee shop where we met for this interview. Ironically, it was the same coffee shop where she used to meet Brennan for their research sessions. The hardest part is trusting myself again, she said. Trusting that I can make good decisions, that I can read people accurately, that I won't fall for another beautiful lie. But she's getting there. One day at a time, one honest relationship at a time, one moment of choosing reality over fantasy. Michael Brennan remains in federal prison. His earliest possible release date is 2033. Rachel Morrison is moving forward, scarred but surviving, wiser but still hopeful. He didn't break me, she said firmly. He tried. But I'm still here,